Ladies and gentlemen, the group of 20 is on the international plane an essay in persuasion. In that context, I believe we had a very successful G-20 meetings. The leaders' declaration and the St. Petersburg action plan are in line with the position we had advocated in the meeting. You have seen the documents, so I won't attempt to summarize their contents, but I would be happy to answer questions. We also had a very useful BRICS meeting. The leaders confirmed that agreement has been reached on the $100 billion currency arrangement. There is also progress on the BRICS Bank, which will lead to a concrete proposal by the next BRICS meeting. On the sidelines of the summit, I had a brief discussion with the Prime Minister of Japan and the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister of Japan, and we have agreed to raise the limit of the swap arrangement between our two countries from $15 billion to $50 billion. This is something by way of the second line of defense for our currency.
Okay. Mr. Jagdish, what are the important intakes of G20 for India?
Well, as I said, G20 is at the international level an essay in persuasion about good practices. The leaders' declaration and the action program reflect our concerns that the world economy is not in good shape, that all countries who have influence in global affairs must work together to revive the growth process. In particular, we have been arguing at Los Cabos that infrastructure development is a commodity which can contribute to revival of growth as well as acceleration of the development process, and that is reflected in the action program. Also, the statements that were made by the President of the World Bank that they are working on a world infrastructure financing facilities. If that comes about, it will certainly help us greatly.
Sir, Priyanka from DD News. What kind of a role do you...
Well, BRICS is an important factor in the world economy because China, Russia, South Africa, Brazil and India together command a significant proportion of the GDP and trade of the world, and therefore whatever happens inside or to the development process in these countries has influence all over the world. I mentioned that as concrete acts, the BRICS countries have agreed to $100 billion of currency reserve arrangement. There is also agreement to start a BRICS bank with $50 billion and the concrete proposal is now being finalized and will be brought before the next summit of the BRICS.
Indian currency and now what should be done domestically also to take care of the current account deficit?
Will, on the margin, certainly what we have agreed with Japan will help. But ultimately, we have to get the fundamentals of our economy in robust health. Last week, Parliament has passed some important legislation, economic legislation, that will also help to revive confidence, and we have to work to ensure that the fiscal deficit does not exceed 4.8%, and whatever we can to contain the current account deficit will be put in practice.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, right here. This is a question on the point that you had raised on the unconventional monetary policies and how they should be tackled because of the impact. The final declaration, clause 14, seems to suggest, sir, that central banks across the world in the advanced economies will continue to be dictated by domestic consideration, including price stability. Was your point of view, therefore, a point that found resonance within the G20? What can we expect as far as the rollback of tapering is concerned, sir?
Well, there was quite separate appreciation of the point that I made about the unintended consequences of unorthodox monetary policies being pursued by countries like the United States and the Eurozone. But I also pointed out in my own speech that I don't see immediate concrete action because central banks are the creation of their domestic legislation. Some value their independence, some also have a limited mandate. But overall, there was general appreciation that when it comes to consultations on global economic policies, macroeconomic policies, for example, in the mutual assistance, mutual development process, the countries should be discussing how monetary policies are being shaped, what are the concerns, and how we can soften the impact on other countries. So I would say that as a general idea, there was a widespread appreciation, and in fact, most developing countries leaders made the same point that I made, and I expect that as an essay in persuasion, it's a good idea, and good ideas are scarce in the world, and I do believe that sooner or later it will catch attention.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Dr. Bharat Agarwal from Dainik Bhaskar. I need to know, sir, how we are going to benefit, that is Indian economy and markets, from your forthcoming visits to United States, Asia, Russia and China.
Well, I have important visits lined up later this month to the United States, then next month to Russia, and there are also visits planned to ASEAN. Now, all these countries, and then to China. All these countries are important trading partners, and therefore, whatever we may do in these meetings, they create a climate conducive to accelerating the processes of cooperation. And I therefore sincerely hope that my discussions in Washington, in Russia, in China, in Brunei would certainly help to create at the margin a better environment for cooperation between us and these countries in matters relating to trade, in matters relating to investment, and certainly I think the visit to the United States, if we do the right things before going there, they will have influence on the climate for capital flows from the United States to our country.
Exactly 3 weeks from now, you will be in New York for the U.S. What do you think are the prospects of such a meeting taking place, especially since there is a view in India that we should avoid meeting Mr. Sharif? Thank you.
Well, I have always maintained that we can choose our friends, but we have no choice with regard to our neighbors. And therefore, under normal conditions, I would be happy to meet with Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, whom I respect, who has said the right things about how relations between our two countries should evolve. But there are certain harsh realities on the ground. If the terror acts do not stop, if those who voice the terrorist thoughts move about freely, if there is no significant progress in bringing the culprits of Bombay massacre to book, that I have to factor in before arriving at a final decision.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. This is Gautam Dahili from Sambad Prasidhi. My question relates to one recent killing of a women writer in Afghanistan. Do you think that this killing is once again, proves that Taliban is again raising hate, particularly killing a women writer, and how the Taliban, Afghanistan forces have not been able to contain these forces? So I want to hear your reaction on both these issues.
Well, I was very sad when I heard about the attack and killing of Sushmita Banerjee. It's a very sad development. She was living in Afghanistan for a long number of years, and she was engaged in important social work. So I feel very sad that such a noble person should have been the victim of the Taliban's wrath. Well, obviously, Afghanistan still is plagued by the Taliban menace, and the government and people of Afghanistan ultimately will have to make up their minds whether the Taliban philosophy of, particularly with regard to the role of women in society, is the thing which should decide their approach to life.
Sankarshan Thakur from Telegraph. Prime Minister, you in person.
Well, I've tried to answer all questions that have been raised, and I have no desire to hide anything from Parliament, whether it is the coal matter or other matters, and I have been as forthright as I can. I made a long statement on the coal sector in previous session of Parliament. I was not allowed to read that statement, but I did issue that statement. It is a public document. So I am an open book.
Sir, I am Sanjay Ganguly from Bartman newspaper, Kolkata. I want a political question. Will you go to the sofa in alliance with Mamata Banerjee? The forthcoming parliament election, 2014. The alliance with Mamata Banerjee, Trinamool Congress?
Well, in politics, there are no permanent enemies and permanent friends. and in many ways a week in politics is sometimes an unusually long period of time. So I don't rule out, for example, the alliances. Mamata Banerjee was a very respectable member of the Congress party at one time. As a leader of the Trinamool also, we were very happy to have him in our government. We would very much like-minded, secular-minded persons should work again to give this our country polity a trust in favor of secular elements.
Last two questions.
Mr. Prime Minister, coming back to domestic issues, and as you were saying on the whole, before you left for Russia, you had a role in Parliament that you command respect. You did command that respect. Your personal image has taken a beating. You're in your last legs of your last tenure and the second term. Does this mean that you will still look at politically for you to continue for a second term, for a third term? Because many in the Congress party would like to see Rahul Gandhi lead the campaign. And then the other issue is that since you say you are an open book, why don't you go ahead and say I'm ready for any questioning like you did with the 2G?
I am. I said I have not prevented anybody at looking at my conduct. And as far as your first question is concerned, I have always maintained that Rahul Gandhi would be an ideal choice for the Prime Minister's position after the 2014 election. I would be very happy to work for the Congress party under the leadership of Mr. Rahul Gandhi.
Last question.
Sir, Praveen here from Lokmat Group. Whether central government is going to consider recognition?
There is no such proposal under consideration.
Thank you very much. With that, we come to the end of this interaction. Thank you.